Well, I have done 18 books by now, but I think this 19th book, which is called Chanakya's New Manifesto, with a subtitle to resolve the crisis within India, it shall be out in the middle of January. I think it's my most important book because one thing is very clear. Unless India changes, our future is at stake. To believe that the current crisis that we are passing through, where we are punching so much below our potential, to believe that that crisis is that of an individual or a party, or that it's seasonal, or that will change after the next elections, or it's because of an international economic crisis, is to delude ourselves. It is a systemic crisis which needs a systemic response, and therefore my new book, Chanakya's New Manifesto, deals with 5 areas which I have specially selected, which I believe constitute the core of the crisis. And these 5 areas are governance, the functioning of democracy, the issue of ethics or corruption, security. Security includes foreign policy, defense and intelligence. With India in the world's most troubled neighborhood, we need to focus on that. And finally, the 5th one is the creation of a genuinely inclusive society, not merely as a slogan, but how can we actually create a society which reduces the number of the absolute poor, the illiterate and so on and so forth. Now, this book is important because it is not merely an analysis of the symptoms. We have had an excess of analysis of only the symptoms. The symptoms are visible. Each of us can see it. Where do we go from there? If you know the symptoms, what are the solutions? Because we have to look for solution, or at least initiate a debate on the change that could perhaps bring about those solutions. And there is a certain urgency to the issue. I think the momentum of what appears to be normal, the ebb and pace of our daily lives, makes us believe that perhaps this crisis, if we shut our eyes, will go away. But the truth is that we are going through a phase where growth has fallen to 5%, where the job market is contracted already by 20%, where it has become clear to us that the manner in which our democracy functions has become the biggest impediment now to the imperatives of governance. All the energies go to political management with multi-coalition governments with wafer-thin majorities, and no energy is left for the main reasons why people elect a government, which is governance. So we need now to look at these issues seriously, because nations don't have the opportunity in perpetuity. There is a window of opportunity. India must make its tryst with destiny. There is a reason for India to be concerned, because the potential that lies before it, the issues at stake, the challenges that we need to face are far greater than we are giving them their due, and therefore a doable blueprint which provides both an analysis of the symptoms and solutions must become, in a sense, the starting point of a nationwide debate for systemic change. And in particular, this book is relevant to the young, because the slogan that I associate with a book like this is, your future is at stake. Because your jobs are important, your notions of stability are important, the reason for you to keep faith in democracy is important, the imperative for you to lead lives in the future where you are not constantly held hostage by the spectre of corruption is important, the fact that India's borders need to be secure and that India pursues a foreign policy which adds to your self-respect, dignity and security is important, and the ultimate taint and shame of India as it exists 65 years after independence, that we have the largest number of the unacceptably poor in the world, the largest single concentration of people who can't read or write, the largest number of malnutrition children, even more than sub-Saharan Africa. This taint should not be the burden of the young as they step into the future. So, for a variety of reasons, the fact that India needs to change, the fact that we need to overcome this crisis or at least face it or at least begin to think about it, the greatest stake in this process is that of the young, because their future is genuinely at stake. Well, you know, my inspiration was Chanakya, because if 2000 years ago you could have an individual in India who could write the world's first comprehensive treatise on statecraft, who could fight against malgovernance, groom a young man to be the kind of king the kingdom needed, who could also unite the fractious terrain of northern India with its republics and small kingdoms to take a stand against the Greeks. If he could reinvent India at that time, a 5,000-year journey of our civilization, which is distinguished by antiquity, by continuity, by peaks of refinement, by diversity, by the capacity for assimilation, if this 5,000-year-old civilization cannot reinvent itself with the inspirations of the past, like the clarity, focus, concentration, discipline and dedication to achieve a goal that Chanakya has displayed, I still retain the optimism that if we could do it, then we can do it now. And that's why I call it Chanakya's new manifesto. Of course, the book has been written on the basis of a great deal of research, because the areas, the canvas that it covers, the 5 areas that I spoke about, are very vast, and we need to see with complete cerebral application of mind that in such a situation, what is the kind of solution which is not borrowed, which is not mimicked, which is not transplanted from outside, but which grows from the cumulative experience of our own journey as a young republic. What kind of doable solutions do we need? So that is the kind of research. It's also based on a great deal on my own experience as an insider in the working of government. I've been for over 3 decades as a diplomat in government. So it takes into account all of these inputs and then produces what is called Chanakya's new manifesto. Leadership is important, but leaders cannot function until they have enabling systems. When I say that this is not a seasonal crisis, or it's not a crisis about one party or one individual, it is because today we are in a situation which in a sense was not envisaged by our constitution. Our constitution envisaged a situation where with democratic elections you will have one party with a stable majority, with a 5-year period to govern and deliver on the promises made to the people. Since the mid-90s, we've had a situation which has become the norm, and for which I don't see a variation in the foreseeable future, of multi-party coalitions coming to power, often with wafer-thin majorities. Now, therefore, even if we were to have the next election, and if nothing else were to change, you would have under different labels the replication of the old system, which again would channelize all energies to political management, survival, the adoption of short-term populist policies, rather than a vision for governance that can provide foundational and enduring solutions to the problems that India needs to challenge. To that extent, it's a systemic crisis, not a crisis about one individual or party. To my mind, the fact that we have multi-party coalitions is a combination of 2 factors. First and foremost, the shrinking in size of the banyan parties, be it the Congress or the national alternatives to it like the BJP. Certainly the growth of regionalism. In a sense, it's also the democratization of politics, where regional voices, which were otherwise subsumed or swamped by the larger national party located elsewhere, have a voice and a role. What is the challenge then before us? Not to negate the fact that there are so many parties, but to provide a system which allows their voice to be represented and yet create that kind of political stability for governance. In other words, the challenge is how do we make the coalition era of our politics work? Because remember one thing, governance and democracy should never become antithetical. You cannot have democracy without governance, and you should not have governance without democracy. So it's not either or. The solutions this book provides is to try and see how, with the kind of democratic system that we have, we can tweak it sufficiently to enable and ensure governance also. I think India is on that threshold, on the crossroads of a very ancient civilization and a young nation. We have reinvented ourselves, we have survived in the past, we have shown our ability of resilience to endure, to overcome a crisis. I believe the experiment of a young nation deserves India and Indians to very seriously give thought to reinventing India so that it not only survives but flourishes as a young nation, drawing inspiration from its civilizational history, but precisely for that reason, showing the innovation and the imagination and the resources and the commitment to ensure that the experiment of a young nation does not fail, but on the contrary, becomes a great success.